You all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation, live on a Saturday morning from the Dharma Bum Temple. Thanks for joining us. So I'd like to maybe just start with a quick question for you all, and for those who are maybe joining us for the first time, welcome. On the screen on the right side or the bottom somewhere, there'll be a little chat box. And maybe just type a couple words in there about something in your life that you're happy about right now. Something that's positive in your life at this moment. So we'll take maybe a minute or two, and a big part of building community is making sure that people communicate and rely on each other. In Buddhism, we call it Sangha, which is a community of people that come together to practice. And so it's good. And, through Dharma Bum Temple, just one way, we have the classes online, we have a Facebook group, a lot of people build friendships, so there's communications there via social media. But it's really important that you stay connected and that you stay in a bit of a constant communication with each other, even though you can't be physically together. So just kind of expressing right now something that, again, you're happy about, or that you're positive, you have a positive view towards. So we'll take a minute or two and just allow people to share that. What do you got? Yeah, go ahead. You can read a couple of them.
Mackenzie shared she's grateful for her romantic partnership and her work as a high school teacher.
Awesome. Thanks, Mackenzie.
Stacy's grateful that we can kayak on the bay again and that the weather's been so lovely.
Great.
Tom's grateful for FaceTime with his sister.
Beautiful.
Eric says San Diego's a nice place to be stuck.
Yeah, stuck, huh?
Matthew shared that their 14-year-old dog made a full recovery from surgery.
Nice. That's good news.
Jessica's grateful for connection.
Beautiful.
Natalie's grateful for spending time with family.
Awesome. Do one more.
Beth's grateful for getting to spend so much time with their 11-year-old daughter.
Yeah, definitely. Good. So I think it's there was somebody, this was almost 10 years ago, and I did an interview. It was I think it was Good News Network, and it was a woman who had started this an online platform of just sharing good news, and it was, I just remember the impact it had on talking to people who would look at it. It was just joyful things to see every day. And I say this stuff regardless of us a few months into this pandemic, but I say this all the time. Those of you who know me, spend more time doing things that you laugh at, that you enjoy, that make you smile, that you feel grateful for, especially in times like these when the news and the reality of the situation we're in can be so kind of dark and really often hard to motivate at times like these. Make sure you're taking time each day to stop and reflect on things that you are grateful for and the opportunities that you have in your life right now, regardless of how different your life might be from how it normally is. You all have things that you can be grateful for in your life. So just take time each day to stop and recognize that. So with that, I think we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin, especially for those who may be joining us for their first time. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe for a period of time. Wherever you are, at home or whatever room you're in or whatever couch or bed or chair or floor you're on, recognize that the environment you're in is going to have maybe more noise than you're used to, potentially. So just recognize these as elements and things happening around us that are okay. And don't try to control it or force it or change it. Just learn to be with it. Don't expect anything. If you're waiting for some grand aha moments or deep realizations, you'll probably be pretty disappointed. Posture, if you are on a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever is comfortable. If you're on a chair, same thing. Try to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders, hands around the knees or lap. I suggest that if comfortable, you close your eyes or slightly open. Mouth will be open or closed, whatever works for you. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And again, starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, the focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply going to continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting Breathing. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around you or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than anyone else. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen, and you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. This is what we get. The practice of meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun, but it's free. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Not just during a pandemic. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else. This is a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course. It's a lifelong practice. All of the challenges and difficulties that you're facing in your life right now will always be there. They just change. The current situation we're dealing with the last couple months is extremely unique. But when we make it through this challenge, which many of us will, you will have additional challenges to face. And that's where this practice is really most beneficial, when you begin to integrate it into your life on a day-to-day basis. Not just because things are challenging. When you look at the practice of generosity and morality and patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom, that can be every day of your life. That was one of the first teachings I got. It's called the 6 Paramitas. My first teacher, Venerable Yijur, that's what she was really ordained on and studied. Did her, for lack of better words, thesis on it. And that was what she taught. And she felt that the entire body of the Buddhist teachings lies in the 6 Paramitas, the 6 perfections. The practice of generosity, morality, and patience, and diligence, and concentration, and wisdom. For the most part, she taught those practices, and she sang beautiful songs. And that was it. Fortunately for you all, I won't sing any songs. But I'd definitely wake you up if I did. So I'd rather just stop there. And I missed Tuesday night So it's been a week since I've sat with you all. So I'd like to just stop there and open up to questions. I always prefer to respond to questions anyways. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. Just go ahead and type it in the little chat box there. Travis will read it, I'll repeat it, and respond. So we'll open up to questions.
I have Jana shared that your words last week comparing meditation to brushing our teeth inspired them to meditate daily.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, I hope you didn't give up brushing your teeth every day. For those who maybe didn't hear it last week or have never heard me say that, it's a metaphor or just an example I give that we brush our teeth every single day. And we don't wait for them to fall out to start brushing them. And so for me, meditation is the same thing. Our minds they're there every day, and they're often a mess, or we're losing our mind, or whatever expression you want to use. So take care of your mind every day, just like you brush your teeth, just like you comb your hair. Some of us, whatever it may be. So I'm glad that that's inspired you to sit and do meditation every day. Thanks for sharing that. We tend to overlook mental, emotional health. We tend to look past that. The brushing the teeth, combing the hair, the eating food, going to the bathroom. We do all these things every single day without thinking about it. And so to create habits and develop a really beneficial kind of pattern and way of being, adding the meditation in there helps.
Jeremy asked if you could elaborate on what you mean when you say, may we all be free from suffering. And they're wondering if that means we would have all become enlightened.
So the question of what do I mean when I say, may we all be free from suffering? And if we're free from suffering, does that mean we're enlightened? Well, let me start with this. An enlightened being, to my understanding, right, the way I perceive it as clearly an unenlightened being, the way I understand enlightened being would be, is they're kind of two separate things. So let me start with this, because that's what's on my mind. The enlightened being would still experience things that you and I would probably call suffering. So an enlightened being, it doesn't mean that you're like in this little bubble and you don't experience pain or suffering. A bodhisattva, for example, the word bodhisattva literally means enlightened beings. Bodhi is enlightened, sattva is being. So bodhisattvas or enlightened beings, they would be no different than you or I. They would experience things no different than you or I. Their reaction, their response, their relationship to these things would be very different. So, for example, if we lose someone, loss of a family member, loss of a loved one, loss of an animal, right? Enlightened beings also would experience these things. But their response to it may be a little bit different in a sense that they may have a deeper understanding of the nature of impermanence. They may have a deeper understanding of that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. They may have a deeper understanding of the ability to not attach to people and places and things the way we do. They may have a deeper ability and understanding of recognizing the endless continuation of consciousness, this teaching of no beginning and no end, which really, if you're interested in Nagarjuna, or Nagarjuna, Nagarjuna, 4th century Buddhist philosopher, wrote an incredible book titled The Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way. So, ironically enough, when I first started in 2003 at the Buddhist temple, the very first week, or maybe second week, I went to the book study. And there were about 5 of us sitting around, and that was a huge crowd if there were 5, sitting around a little table in the classroom, and we were studying the fundamental wisdom of the middle way with 3 different translations, as if that was going to make it any easier. Nagarjuna is a genius, often considered as the second wisest to the Buddha himself. And this is really where I began to look at the teachings of no beginning and no end, endless continuation of consciousness. So coming back to the question about, enlightened beings, they would experience and deal with same situations just like us. An enlightened being could still get stuck in traffic. An enlightened being could still order a latte and have it made the wrong way. An enlightened being could still have a disagreement with somebody. They just respond differently. And for me as a practitioner, I typically won't say to myself, what would an enlightened being do in this moment? I typically say to myself, in this moment, am I responding in a way that is free from greed, free from anger, and free from ignorance? Which is the second noble truth. First noble truth, the first thing the Buddha taught, life is suffering, dukkha. Second is the cause, greed, anger, ignorance. The third is the end of suffering. And the fourth is the path, the Eightfold Path. Correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. You all have plenty of time at home. You can Google all of that if you're not familiar with it. Right? 4 Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. But the practice for me is, am I coming from a place of greed, anger, ignorance? Are my thoughts, are my words, are my actions filled with greed, anger, ignorance? Are they filled with generosity, compassion, and wisdom? And if they're filled with compassion, wisdom, and generosity, then I'm coming from a place of a more enlightened mindset. Again, not from a place of being enlightened, but a more enlightened mindset and a less unenlightened place. So enlightened beings respond different. The question of what do I mean when I say, and hopefully that's helpful. Ask me next week and I'll respond completely differently. The question of, may we all be free from suffering? So at the end, as you may be referencing it for those who don't know, and again, this is what I was taught in my tradition, which comes out of Taiwanese Buddhism. It's a Chan, which is the Chinese word for Zen, and Pure Land. So it's a Zen or Chan and Pure Land Buddhist practice. And in the tradition that I was really kind of taught in my Buddhist practice is at the end, and this occurs in most Buddhist traditions and schools as well, it's just done differently. But at the end, we join palms and we do what's called a transfer of merit. And then we transfer any positive merit that we may accrue from this time of practice of meditation, exploring these beautiful practices. And then we transfer that to others. And we hope that may all be free from suffering. So I think of it as an interesting dynamic because the Buddha's first teaching is, we will suffer. Yet we aspire, we practice, we cultivate to not suffer. And then at the end, we say, may all be free from suffering. So when I usually talk about suffering, and again, I relate it to my practice. What I say is, I don't wake up one day and think to myself, is today the day I'm going to suffer? Is today the day that suffering is going to be done in my life? I think of it as, is today the day that I'm going to suffer less than I did yesterday? Can I suffer less today than I did yesterday? Will I suffer less today than I did yesterday? If I come from a place of greed, anger, ignorance, I'm going to continue to suffer. If I come from a place of generosity, compassion, wisdom, I'll suffer less. So this idea and this practice of may all be free from suffering, in Jeff's crazy head, one way I could look at it is, may we all suffer less today than we did yesterday. Because that's really how I practice it, personally. But I do think it's a very beautiful, I don't know if I'd call it a wish or an aspiration, like a prayer, because I do hope that we all are free from suffering. Even though the Buddha's very technical teachings are once we are born, which we all are, we're guaranteed to experience suffering. Now, for those who might be brand new to Buddhism, it doesn't mean your whole life sucks. It just means that throughout your life, you're going to suffer a lot. You also have joy and happiness and wonderful moments, and those things exist too. But our life will never be free from suffering. Yet, we still cultivate and practice to hopefully be free from suffering. And I won't get into right now the whole idea of the only way to be free from suffering from the Buddha's teachings is to liberate yourself from the cycle of birth and death, to get off of the wheel. I think Travis just did a recent talk on the 12 links, right? Dependent origination. So scroll a couple down on the YouTube channel and Travis talks about the 12 links of dependent origination. And when you can break free from any one of those, you free yourself from the cycle of birth and death, and you free yourself from suffering. So in an hour, Travis will have summed up for you how to no longer suffer. Hopefully that's helpful, Jeremy. Other questions?
Mackenzie shared, I struggle to stay present in the moment in my work teaching, which is so future oriented and requires so much planning. Any advice? Yeah,
I mean, this idea of, being a teacher or any career, profession, any job you have, it requires planning. And, there's a lot of very practical, logistical reasons we plan, and it's important. But, what I've learned from this practice is that this idea of staying in the present moment is because that's all there is in this moment. And while you may be planning your, semester or your next week's lesson plan or whatever it might be, here you are in this moment. And so you can only do so much at a time. Often when we're here, I make the joke and I say, how many of you drove here today? And you see all these hands and, I'll gesture outside and say, how many of you know that your car is still here? And then I get everybody worried, wondering if their car is still there, Mackenzie, do you have a car? I'll maybe guess and assume yes. It's a wrong guess, a wrong assumption possibly, but does Mackenzie have a car? Let's just make this easy.
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay, so Mackenzie has a car, all right? How do you know it's outside right now? Unless you're staring at it through a window. You don't. How do you know that you'll have a job next week? You don't. How do you know that students will actually show up to your class? You don't. How do we know that any of us are even going to wake up tomorrow? We don't. How do we know that anything that we want to happen today is going to happen? We don't. We don't know anything about the future. All we know is right now we are sitting, we are breathing, we are engaged in this manner at this moment. That's the current reality. And then that reality is gone. So ideally, we'd like to think that your car is still there, that you'll have your job next week, that your students will show up, that you'll wake up tomorrow. we like to think that all those things are going to happen. And one should not ideally live in fear, worried about whether those things will happen or not. But the reality is, this has a lot to do with letting go of control and knowing that we don't know what's going to occur. So plan all you want. The planning is important. But how many things in your life have gone exactly how you thought they would be up to this point? I mean, you're sitting here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock at home or wherever you are on your phone or computer, watching some dude talk about stuff at some temple place on YouTube while you're locked inside during a pandemic. 6 months ago, did any of you think that that was going to happen? No. But here we are. So whatever you planned 6 months ago, all of those plans have been completely destroyed. So whatever you think you're planning for a week or a month or 3 weeks from now, or 3 months from now, we don't know if that's going to be the reality or not either. So I like to use the word, for me in my head, prepared versus planning. Prepare in this present moment for what may come in the future. But to have a long, drawn-out plan when you have no idea what's even going to occur an hour from now, and not only on top of that, to then worry about this plan, doesn't help much. It brings anxiety, fear, worry. Be prepared. Be prepared in each moment for the next moment. And if the time comes, then you'll be prepared. So, for those who are maybe brand new or newer to Buddhist practice, staying present, being in the present moment, doesn't mean that you just like give up and don't do anything. That's not practical. It's not this conventional reality we live in. Buddhism, we talk about ultimate reality, conventional reality. Conventional reality is you have a job, you have students, you have a school that relies on you. Do your job and do it well. You don't just type in one day, well, I'm Buddhist now, sorry, I'm not showing up for school. Be prepared. Be prepared well. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. There's a great movie, I haven't referenced this one in a while, but it's called Being There. It's a Peter Sellers movie. You may have a little bit of time on your hands right now to watch a movie, but watch it. I would say it's one of the best Buddhist movies. Groundhog Day, Matrix, and Fight Club, and then Being There also. And it'll show you what happens in 2 hours. What an incredible life one can have if they just stay fully present in the moment. So, other questions? I hope that's helpful, Mackenzie.
James is wondering why we're so often drawn to habits that contribute to our suffering.
Well, I don't know why we are, and I can't tell you why you are, but it sounds like, so when someone says, why are we? Or how come they? The first thing I would do is and my guess is this is what you meant, but I just want to clarify this because I think it's an important point of practice. I share this a lot with our college group when, we'll sit there with 80 people in a circle talking about experiences. And we've ingrained in the culture to not start sentences with, why do we, why do they, how come they, it's I. So first I would suggest rephrasing the question that says, why am I, James, so drawn to, habits that are cause suffering? Yeah. Why are you, James, so stuck in habits that cause you suffering? Start with that question. That's a very good question. Most often, when we look at how we live our lives, we have this ego. I have this ego that I try to feed. And very often when I do things that feed my ego, it's coming from a place of greed, anger, ignorance. And when I come from a place of greed, anger, ignorance and make my ego feel good temporarily, Very often it's things that will make me or others suffer. So I would say very directly that without even knowing who you are or what you do, and I don't need to know and want to know, you do habitual patterns and behaviors that make you suffer because you think your ego is the most important thing. That's why. You think you are more important than other people. You think yourself is this permanent thing that is real. You think that if you get something immediately or very quickly, that it's going to give you this instant gratification and feel better, which you will then just feel shame and guilt and remorse for an hour later. But at that moment, it made your ego feel so good. It's your ego, my friend. That's why you do things that cause suffering. Spend some time recognizing that every person in this world, every sentient being, every animal, every insect, every bug, all of that stuff are no more or less important than you are. Look at the harm we bring to animals to feed ourselves. To me, that clearly says we think we're more important than they are, that we can take their lives to feed us. Look at these things. Begin to practice more of a selfless way of being, and you begin to cut through your ego. And also understand that this ego that you think you're feeding is just an illusion. You know, maybe you think you're not good enough, or you're not living the life that you want, and so you feel depressed and miserable. So you seek something that makes you feel better for the moment. And then you just sink deeper into that state of depression and misery. So you seek more. And then you're just stuck in this vicious cycle. It was probably 20 years of my life, so I can relate to that. And what I learned from the Buddhist teachings is that I only cared about myself. And I didn't really care about anybody else other than maybe a handful of people. And I thought I was more important and better than everybody else. And I looked out for me and me only. And I would, abuse anything and anyone I could to make sure I got what I wanted. So once I started this practice and I began to recognize that I'm no more important than anybody else, my challenges, my struggles, my joys, my happiness is no more important or less important than anyone else, then things changed. So I had to stop feeling that I was so important. And at the same time, not feeling that you're worthless. Finding a balance. So hopefully that's helpful. We'll do, I think, one more question, if you got one.
So Buma asked, does Buddha love everyone, such as Jewish people, Black people, and gay people?
Great question. Such a heavy one with 5 minutes left. So the question is, does Buddha love everyone, such as Jewish people, Black people, and gay people? Is that exactly how it was worded? Yeah. Okay.
Well,
I just want to.
not people, but
Okay.
People.
You had it.
I
Okay.
want to read it.
I just wanted to repeat it so it's clear in my head. So let me start with saying this: the Buddha himself, and I'll sum this up. He died 2,500 years ago. He was this is like the 30-second version of Life of the Buddha for anyone who might not know it, but he was a prince. Father was a king. He grew up, wealthy, all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, everything you could have for 29 years. He left that life here on the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years at 35. He became called the Buddha, was just a name, the awakened one. And then he taught for 45 years, and then he died. He died at 80. Again, this is 500 years before Christ. So anytime people ask a question of specifically about the Buddha, you have to understand that he is gone, right? And what survives and what remains are his teachings. It's called the Dharma. That's when we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Okay? Let me kind of start at a back my way into this just to give some clarity. When we started the Dharma Bum Temple 14 years ago, we opened it to be a place where people from all religions, all races, all gender identities, all sexual orientations, all abilities, all walks of life could come as they are and sit and breathe together, right? All of those things, wherever you come from, just show up as you are. This practice is not about judging people for their race, their religion, their culture, their gender, their sexual orientation, their abilities. It's about recognizing that we are human. Now, it's also about, I think, personally, recognizing that within this human realm, that there are privileges that exist in the societies that we have created, and to not be ignorant about that. I'm very aware of white privilege. I'm very aware of male privilege. I'm very aware of the privileges that I have. But to me, that's part of being wise and waking up through Buddhist teachings and being aware of everyday life. So the very direct question of, is Buddha okay? Absolutely. Now, at the time of the Buddha, I also want to clarify this. At the time of the Buddha, you're in India 500 years before Christ. You have the caste system. You have gender inequality. You have all of these things that were not okay. At the time of the Buddha, initially the Sangha of the community was just monks. And then there was the interest in a female becoming a monk or a nun. And the Buddha initially said no. Because again, caste system in India, males, females were not equal. And so then one of the disciples asked the Buddha, well, doesn't she have the same ability to awaken as we do? And the Buddha said yes. And I'm making this very short because I don't want to go too long on this. But the Buddha said yes. So that started the order of nuns within Buddhism. There's a lot of history around gender inequality within Buddhism because there's a lot of history of gender inequality in the world. There's a lot of history of racial inequality in the world. So all of these things may trickle into communities that you see, but that's not because the Buddha taught that. That's because churches and temples and mosques and all of these places are being led by unenlightened human beings like myself. And within that, you have this beautiful teaching of the Buddha that says, we're all human. What's in our mind and what's in our heart is what's important. Not where we come from, not what we were taught being raised. Dharma Bum Temple, I always say this, we see 500-700 people a week when we're open. And if there were 60, 70 people here right now, and I'd say, how many of you are Buddhist, you'd see about 3 hands. The people that come here, they're Christian, they're Catholic, they're Muslim, they're Jewish, they're pagan, they're lack thereof. They're not here to be Buddhist, I'm not here to make them Buddhist, and they're not leaving Buddhist. They're here to learn how to be kind and compassionate to themselves and all people, and animals, and all sentient beings. So, that's a quick 5-minute response, but hopefully that's helpful. Our community has always had, I used to say our board members, from the LGBTQ community, our early board members, and the community in itself has always had a huge representation from the LGBTQ community. We have a relatively diverse Sangha community. We can always be more diverse. Every community can be more diverse. And we continue to explore ways to look at that. But at the same time, doing our best to make sure that everyone, regardless of where they come from or who they are or what they believe in, that they are welcome. Absolutely. And I think that's important. And I think beyond a Buddhist temple or a church or a grocery store or a restaurant, we should all do our best always to make people feel comfortable everywhere, but not close our eyes and be blind to the privileges and the inequalities gender, racial inequalities that exist, because it's real, and it's pretty sad, but it is what we have in our society today. So I hope that's helpful for you. With that, I'm going to close. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Joyce's son during his time of rebirth, and to Joyce and her family and friends who suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you head off there. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. As I mentioned earlier, we opened this temple 14 years ago, initially downtown, to introduce Buddhist practice and meditation to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our unenlightened view of Buddhist teachings and share it with those who are present with us. Every night we have different practices going on. I do an intro to Buddhism on Tuesday nights as well. Wednesday, Alex does a loving kindness, a metta practice. Travis does Dharma Bum Basics and meditation on Thursdays. All of our classes, about probably 90% of our classes, are online now. We have our recovery sangha every night of the week, just about. Sunday morning as well, Saturday morning. Our family sangha is still going. Our college group is still going. Our teenage group is still going. Our day of silence is happening the first Saturday of the month. Our morning classes, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8:30 is going on. And also our Tuesday afternoon, Natalie is starting that up again too. So Tuesday afternoon, or Tuesday noontime Dharma. So go to the website, dharmabums.org. You'll see the calendar, the schedule. Click on it, open it up, and you'll see the link, whether it's YouTube or Zoom. Other than that, just please continue to be safe. Please continue to stay home. As things open up, let's not get, let's stay wise. Use this time to stay home, to practice, to get to know your own mind. And I wish you all well, and we'll see you all soon.